Well, during World War II, it was not only the boys from the family that were in the service, the whole family was involved. It was a family effort. The parents sacrificed much too, because they would be at home worrying, and my dad would be working hard on the farm to produce food for the war effort, and so they would be short of help too, so the work would be much harder for them too, do it. So much the parents and the families of the boys that were in the military don't often get the credit or recognition of what their contribution was to the war effort.
The home
front. It's always the military.
The home
but
front.
It isn't only the military that that contributed to the war effort. I just want everyone that we're concerned about keeping our country free and keeping it going. So that's what we're trying to tell the story of the civilian part of the war effort, and especially the families that had boys in the service that were I can just sometimes I stop to think about it. When you're young, you don't think about that too much, but later on in life you think, what were my parents thinking all the time during this time? What were they thinking about when you got 3 boys in combat units and scattered all over the world, from Guam and Saipan and Tinian and Okinawa and Philippines and the South Pacific and France and Germany and the Vosges Mountains and Alsace-Lorraine and the Maginot Line and the Siegfried Line and the opposite side of the world. So imagine they think about how much territory, how much area that covered for parents to think about, where they didn't know much of what it was where you were, of course, because there wasn't any television that showed pictures of everything then. So they can imagine what their imagination was of what was going on. Could they imagine an island, a group of army unit or a marine unit?
So who was in the army? Who was in the army?
Earl was in the army.
And so he was
Roy was in the Marines. And I was in the army. And they didn't have, say, what are they going to do? Are they just going into a landing craft to make a landing on some island someplace, or in Europe? What are they doing this morning? You try to imagine. Well, we were there, so we didn't have to imagine where we were. We knew where we were, and I tried to imagine where my brothers, what they would be doing at the time. I think about that sometimes. Here they're almost on the other side of the world, and it's so hot there you can't hardly wear a shirt. And they got all kinds of insects and malaria and jungle rot for their feet and all this to put up with too. Where here we're in Europe, in the Vosges Mountains, it's the opposite. We worry about freezing our feet and our fingers and our nose and wearing parkas and everything. So it's just completely extreme one way or the other. Then I always thought to myself, well, as long as I have to be someplace, I would rather be in France or Germany where it was cold,
Mm-hmm.
rather than being in some island in the South Pacific where it was so hot you could understand it. So I used to think about what my brothers were doing too. Every once in a while I said, well, I wonder what they're doing right now. Are they making a landing, or are they... So and I connect I knew what the Army infantry and Rosen infantry, and I knew what the infantry job was, and I knew what, and Rosen a tank outfit, and I knew what the tankers outfit were. So I knew what their duty was and what their activity was, but you couldn't see the area, the terrain, and whatever it was. So, and I used to think about that. So, as I said before, what were my parents thinking at that time? And sometimes you'd think about home. I wonder what they're doing at home right now. They're in the field. Maybe this time when they're picking corn, or why are they driving the tractor, or what is that? I knew what they were doing. I knew, I could picture the farm and the farm work and all that. But it was awful hard for them to picture just where we were.
Well, what did they say to you when you all signed up, enlisted? They try to talk you out of it, or talk you into it, or?
No. I remember when I was right out of high school, and I was going to go down and see if I could get into Air Force for flight training, and I was 18, and there was a little bit reluctance there that they didn't want me to go. When they figured that there's two going already, why hurry up? You know, I remember that. They put up a little bit of a... But finally we talked about it, and then they said, well, okay, you go ahead. And so I think they were reluctant to see you go, of course. I mean, I knew family would. But there wasn't any extreme...
Mm-hmm.
arguing or
who's
anything. That was all done talking. You know, wasn't anybody getting angry and saying, you know, you have to have your own way or anything like this. It was just...
so now
my family, when they made a decision, my mother or dad or brothers or everything, it was never done with anger. It was always just plain discussion, and a decision was made without anybody going off angry. So I suppose we had discussions back and forth. I can't remember what all they said, but I think my dad especially, he knew from way back that I was, whenever I had a chance, as soon as I was going to head for the Air Corps. Because I talked about it, and he used to say, well, aviation is the future. That is the future of this country's aviation. He said, there's no question about it. So he never said, oh, we don't want you flying airplanes, that's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Never said that. But they probably were concerned about it. Well, like I started taking flying lessons back in high school, there wasn't anybody else around to take flying lessons. I didn't think it was anything big deal. I was just something I wanted to do. But there wasn't anybody else doing it. And I suppose they said, you're still in high school and you want to start flying already? Well, and